I'd been to Cole's house 100 times before. Game nights, study sessions, late-night pizza runs. It was practically my second home all through high school and into college breaks. So when he shot me a text that read, "Dinner at my place tonight, Dad's cooking, you in?" I didn't think twice. I replied with a thumbs up and a quick, "Be there at 6. A minute later, another text buzzed in, "I might be late. Practice ran long. Just head in if I'm not there." I paused at that one, thumb hovering over the screen. Heading into someone's house without them there felt a little awkward, but it was Cole, and his dad, Mr. Grayson, had always been cool with me. Strict in that polished CEO kind of way, always buttoned up, smelled like leather and citrus, but he never minded me being around. Still, I hadn't seen him much since we graduated high school. It had been almost a year. When I pulled into the driveway, the house looked the same. Neatly trimmed hedges, porch light already on though the sun hadn't set. I grabbed the bottle of soda I'd picked up and walked up the steps. Before I could even knock, the door opened. "Look who it is, Mr. Grayson said with a warm grin, holding the door open with one hand and a dish towel in the other. Come in, come in. Cole said you'd be early." I stepped inside, smiling. "Hey, Mr. Grayson, sorry if I'm intruding." He waved that off immediately. "Nonsense, you're not a guest, you're family. Cole's always dragging you in here anyway." He closed the door behind me, and I was hit with the rich smell of something savory. Garlic, herbs, maybe roasted chicken. It made my stomach growl. "Whatever that is, it smells amazing." He gave a satisfied nod. "You're lucky. I cook better than I parent, if you ask Cole." I laughed, suddenly more relaxed. Same old house. Same polished wood floors. Same framed photos lining the entryway wall. Baby Cole in a pumpkin costume. Family ski trips. Even one I was in, mid-laugh during a backyard barbecue. Mr. Grayson led me into the kitchen, where a pot simmered on the stove and the oven clicked quietly behind him. "Can I help with anything?" I asked, setting the soda on the counter. "You can keep me company," he said, reaching for a pair of wine glasses. "Unless you're underage and planning to report me." I grinned. "I'm 21 now. Barely." He poured 2 glasses without asking, slid one toward me across the island. I hesitated, but only for a second. "So," he said, leaning against the counter, "how's school treating you?" And that's when I realized this wasn't small talk. His voice was calm, but focused, like he was really listening. I wasn't used to that. Most adults asked about school the same way they asked about the weather, polite and disinterested. But Mr. Grayson kept his eyes on me the whole time I talked. He asked follow-ups, made me laugh, even remembered I'd switched majors last semester. "You're sharper than Cole, you know that?" he said with a smirk. "Don't tell him I said that." I chuckled. "He'd agree with you. He's just hoping to coast through on a sports scholarship." He shook his head fondly. "Still thinks the world will hand him things. But you've always been deliberate." The way he said it made something in me shift. It wasn't a flirty line, but it wasn't just a compliment either. Felt charged. I looked down into my glass, suddenly aware of how quiet the house was. The hum of the fridge. The low instrumental music playing from the speaker in the corner. No footsteps. No Cole. I checked my phone. Still no new messages. "Cole's usually the one doing the talking," Mr. Grayson said after a beat. "Nice to actually get a full sentence out of you." I smiled awkwardly. "Yeah, he's kind of the center of attention." He tilted his head. "And what about you? You always happy staying in the background?" I blinked at that. The question wasn't judgmental, it felt curious, almost intimate. I shrugged. "I don't mind it." He sipped his wine. "Maybe someone just needs to see you properly." That landed heavier than I expected. I didn't know how to respond, so I sipped my wine too, letting it linger. Mr. Grayson turned to check the oven, breaking the moment, but I couldn't ignore how my skin prickled. Like the air had subtly changed. Warmer, tighter. He pulled out a pan of roasted vegetables and set them on the counter between us. "You're staying for dinner whether Cole shows up on time or not," he said with a wink. "I didn't make all this for myself." I nodded slowly, heart doing something I didn't quite understand. The air felt different, and I wasn't sure if I was ready for what that meant. The smell of rosemary and roasted garlic filled the kitchen, but the silence felt louder than anything. My phone buzzed just as Mr. Grayson set down a dish of perfectly roasted chicken. Cole. Sorry, bro, practice ran long. Give me an hour? Maybe more. I stared at the message, then looked up. Cole's still tied up. Says he'll be another hour. Mr. Grayson barely flinched. Typical. He shrugged and grabbed 2 plates. Well, no sense letting good food go cold. I hesitated. Are you sure? I can wait, or maybe… Nonsense. He gave me a half smile. He invited you. I cooked for you. We're already here. Before I could protest again, he was setting a place at the island and motioning for me to sit. The table was already set with silverware, napkins, a carafe of water, and, somehow, candles. Felt deliberate. He poured more wine into my glass, not asking this time, then sat across from me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Just the sounds of forks against porcelain and the low hum of some jazz track still playing in the background. This is really good, I said, after a bite of the chicken. Seriously? Mr. Grayson gave a modest nod. It's my one party trick. Keeps me from dying alone. I laughed. I doubt you'd ever have that problem. He gave me a look, one that was amused and sharp all at once. Why's that? I shrugged, suddenly self-conscious. You're just put together, confident. There was a pause before he responded. Confidence is just knowing how to make other people feel like they're the ones in control. I looked up at him. He was watching me, not in the vague, polite way most adults did. He really looked, the kind that made you feel seen in a way that was both comforting and a little terrifying. You still with that girl? He asked suddenly. I blinked. What girl? He tilted his head. Didn't Cole mention something last year? Thought you were dating someone. Oh, no, that didn't last. I played with my fork. We were different. He didn't say anything for a moment, just sipped his wine and nodded like he understood without needing details. Dating in college is a circus, he said eventually. Everyone pretending to know who they are, hoping someone else buys the act. I laughed softly. That's surprisingly accurate. I went through it too, he said. Except I wore suits and called it networking. I smiled. And now, he said slowly, I just want honesty. No games. No pretending. That landed strangely, heavy. Like he wasn't just talking about college or dating, he was talking about something else. Maybe me. The wine was warming my face. Or maybe it was his gaze again. Steady, patient, unblinking. He tilted his head, eyes still on me. You know, you have a good smile. I looked down, suddenly aware of my hands, the way I was sitting. Thanks. You don't use it much, he added. But when you do, it's honest. I didn't know what to say to that, so I smiled again. Partly because I didn't know what else to do, partly because I wanted to. There was a long pause. Not awkward, just full. He leaned forward a little, forearms on the table, fingers laced. Do you know what you want? I blinked. You mean, in life? He nodded. Not really, I admitted. Some days I think I do. Other days, it's like I'm watching myself from outside and wondering what the hell I'm doing. He smiled faintly. That's more honest than most people ever get. You sound like a therapist, I joked, trying to break the tension. He chuckled. I've been called worse. There was another pause. The music swelled slightly, soft piano and low saxophone. I think you're braver than you give yourself credit for, he said. I frowned. Why? Because you don't chase noise, he said. You're quiet, observant. You listen. That takes strength. I didn't realize I was holding my breath until I exhaled. That's not something I hear often. He stood then, slowly, and walked to the sink with his empty plate. The muscles in his back flexed subtly beneath his shirt. His sleeves were rolled to his elbows. Everything about him looked effortless. I rose too, grabbing my plate, but as I moved beside him, I felt it again, that quiet charge. Like the air between us had thickened, just enough to notice. He turned toward me, eyes flicking briefly to my lips before meeting my gaze again. "You've grown up a lot," he said softly. "You're not a boy anymore, are you?" The plate in my hands felt suddenly too light. My throat went dry. He didn't touch me. He didn't lean in. He just stood there, close enough to make me aware of every breath, every heartbeat, every possibility I didn't know I'd been carrying inside me. And for the first time, I didn't look away. I stacked our plates, trying to still the tremor in my hands. Mr. Grayson moved beside me, reaching for the wine bottle. His arm brushed mine, light, almost unintentional, but it sent a current straight through me. I didn't pull away. "I'll help with the dishes," I said, too quickly. He gave a slow nod. "Appreciated." Cole never lifts a finger. I followed him to the sink, setting the plates on the counter. He rolled his sleeves higher, revealing forearms marked by veins and a few faded scars. Hands that had clearly done more than just paperwork. The faucet hissed to life, steam rising between us. "Hot water," he warned, then gently bumped my hip with his. "You dry. I'll wash." I grabbed a towel and nodded, eyes focused on anything but him. Yet somehow, I was aware of everything. The way his breath shifted when he leaned forward, the heat coming off his skin, the subtle scent of spice and soap that clung to his shirt. He passed me the first plate. Our fingers touched, not an accident this time. I swallowed hard. "You okay?" he asked quietly, not looking at me.
"Yeah, elite."
The tension was a thread pulled tight, invisible but undeniable. He handed me another dish, slower this time, his fingers lingering just a second too long. I couldn't look at him. Not yet. "You want another glass?" he asked, drying his hands. I hesitated. I knew I should say no, but I didn't. "Sure." He poured the wine, this time only half a glass, as if he knew I was at a tipping point already. We leaned against opposite sides of the island, the kitchen dim now, with only the warm under-cabinet lights and the soft jazz still playing somewhere in the background. He watched me over the rim of his glass. "You know," he said slowly, "I've always liked you." I blinked. "Like?" "You're different than the others Cole brought around. You listen. You think before you speak. There's something quiet in you, but strong." I stared at the countertop, heart thudding. He continued, voice steady. "Even back then, I could tell. You weren't trying to prove anything." I finally looked up. His gaze didn't flinch. We held it for a moment. Maybe a few seconds, maybe a full minute. Long enough for the silence to swell, for my chest to tighten. I didn't know what to say. "You don't have to say anything," he added. "I just wanted you to know." Something about the way he said it, honest, unforced, made it feel even more dangerous. Because it wasn't a game. He meant it. And that terrified me. I stepped back from the counter. "Excuse me, I need the bathroom." He nodded once, no change in expression. "Second door on the right." I moved quickly, trying not to stumble. Once inside, I closed the door and leaned against it, pressing my palms to the cool wood. What the hell was happening? I looked in the mirror. Cheeks flushed, eyes too wide, chest rising and falling like I just sprinted. This wasn't like me. I wasn't impulsive. I wasn't reckless. I didn't do this. And yet, I could still feel the shape of his words in the air around me. "You're different. I've always liked you." It wasn't just about attraction, it was the way he saw through the noise. The way his voice dipped when he said my name. The way I'd felt when our eyes met. Like something in me had already leaned in before I had a chance to decide. I splashed water on my face, took a deep breath, and stared at my reflection. There was no going back to how this night started. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to. I stayed in the bathroom longer than I needed to. Not because I was hiding. Not exactly. But because I needed the pause, the space to breathe, to sort through the noise in my head, the pounding in my chest. I stared at myself in the mirror again. I didn't look different, but something was different. And the worst part was, it didn't feel wrong. Half of me wanted to bolt out the front door, claim some emergency, and never look back. But the other half, the part that still burned from his voice, his eyes, his presence, that half wanted to open the door and walk straight into whatever this was. Had I really not noticed all this before? Except, maybe I had. I remembered the way Mr. Grayson had always lingered when I spoke, even when I was younger. The way his hand rested on my shoulder once after Cole's graduation, just a second too long. How he'd complimented my speech that day and said, "You have more to say than most grown men I know." Back then, I thought it was just a father being polite. Now, I wasn't so sure. I closed my eyes. The memories felt different now. Sharper. Warmer. And yet, I kept thinking of Cole. Your best friend's dad. Really? It was a line I didn't know I'd ever even imagined crossing. But hadn't he crossed it first? My fingers gripped the edge of the sink. I forced one long breath out through my nose. I couldn't hide in here forever. I opened the door slowly, stepping back into the hallway. The lights were dimmer now, just a soft golden glow spilling from the kitchen. I checked my phone. No new messages. Cole still wasn't on his way. I followed the music, slow, thoughtful jazz, and rounded the corner. Mr. Grayson was sitting on the living room couch, one arm slung casually over the back, wine glass in hand. The room was lit only by a single floor lamp, casting shadows across his face and chest. He looked up as I entered. He didn't smile this time, didn't offer a joke to break the tension. Just looked at me, like he'd been waiting. I stood awkwardly in the doorway for a beat too long, then moved to the armchair across from him. The air between us was heavier than before. Not uncomfortable, just dense with everything unsaid. He took a slow sip of his wine, set the glass down gently on the side table. Then, "I'm not going to pretend anymore." I felt my chest tighten. His voice was low, certain, like a stone dropped in still water. "You felt it too, didn't you?" he asked.
No smirk. No arrogance.
Just quiet honesty. I didn't answer right away, because the truth, I had felt it, and not just tonight. There'd been a pull I couldn't name for a long time. Something I buried under friendship, under respect, under every label that made this easier to ignore. But now, under the soft lamplight, with no one else around and no excuses left to cling to, the denial crumbled. I nodded, just barely. His shoulders eased, just slightly. "I didn't plan any of this," he said. "You walked in tonight and I told myself it would be like every other time. But then you smiled, and I realized I was lying to myself." I looked down, unsure what to do with my hands, my breath, the pounding in my ears. "This isn't some trick," he said gently. "I'm not here to confuse you or make you feel anything you don't want to feel." I looked up at him. "Then what are you doing?" His eyes searched mine. "I'm being honest. For once." He leaned forward, forearms resting on his knees. "You're smart, kind, thoughtful. You walk into a room and bring this calm with you. I don't know if you see it, but I do." I couldn't look away from him. My pulse was loud in my throat. He continued, softer now. "I don't care about labels or expectations. All I know is, when I'm around you, I feel more myself than I have in years." Silence stretched again. I swallowed hard. This would change things. "I know. Cole. He doesn't need to know anything," he said, though his voice was firm, not secretive. "Unless you want him to. And maybe there's nothing to tell." I hesitated. My head was full of noise, but my body was still, locked in place by something bigger than fear. "I don't want to hurt anyone," I said quietly. "I'd never let you," he replied. We sat in silence after that.
No promises.
No pressure. Just two people suspended in a moment that had been building for far longer than either of us admitted. And I realized then I wasn't afraid of what might happen. I was afraid of what I'd miss if I walked away. I don't know how long we sat there. The quiet wasn't uncomfortable anymore. It was just full, heavy with possibilities I couldn't put into words. Mr. Grayson leaned back, but his eyes never left mine. "You're thinking too hard," he said gently. I let out a breath. "I don't know what I'm doing." He tilted his head. "You don't have to know. Not tonight." "I'm confused," I admitted. "But I'm also curious. And that feels like crossing some invisible line I can't uncross." He stood slowly, taking one step closer, not towering over me, not looming, just closing the distance in a way that made my skin spark. His voice was low, careful. "Do you want me to stop?" My eyes flicked to his. There wasn't a trace of arrogance there.
No manipulasten.
Just a man standing in front of me, asking for permission. And in that moment, with the music humming softly and the rest of the world so far away, I didn't say yes. But I didn't say no either. He took one more step, then paused. Close enough now that I could feel the heat coming off him, smell the warmth of wine and whatever cologne lingered on his collar. His hand lifted, fingers brushing the side of my face, tentative and slow. I didn't pull away. I leaned in before I realized I was doing it. And then we kissed. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't hungry or wild. It was quiet, soft, the kind of kiss that says I see you. His lips were warm, steady, and I let myself melt into it, just for a moment. But then reality hit like cold water. I pulled back suddenly, heart racing. This is wrong. He didn't move, didn't chase. "What about Cole?" I asked, voice barely above a whisper. "He's my friend. Your son." Mr. Grayson's expression didn't change. If anything, he softened. "I know," he said. "That's why I asked if you wanted me to stop." I took a step back, needing space to think, to breathe. He didn't follow. He just nodded once. "You don't owe me anything. I won't pressure you. This only happens if you want it, on your terms." The room felt too small, the walls too close. I looked at the floor, then the front door, then him again. "I need to go," I said quickly. I need to clear my head." He stepped aside, giving me a clear path to the door. "Okay." I moved fast, almost too fast, grabbing my jacket off the chair without looking back. But just as my hand touched the doorknob, I heard him say softly, "You felt it too. Whatever this is, it's real. You don't have to run from that." I didn't answer. I stepped outside into the night, the cool air hitting my skin like a jolt. I walked to my car with my pulse hammering in my ears, my heart somewhere between guilt and gravity. Inside the car, I sat behind the wheel, gripping it like it might steady me. My lips still tingled, my brain still raced, and in the silence, I realized the truth I wasn't ready to say out loud. I didn't regret the kiss. I just didn't know what it meant yet. I didn't sleep much that night, or the one after. I kept replaying it, the way he looked at me before it happened, the way his voice dropped when he said my name, the way my heart didn't race from fear, but from want. And that kiss, it stayed with me, lingering on my lips like it had left a mark. I tried to go back to normal, pretend nothing happened, but I couldn't. I ignored Cole's texts. "Where'd you go that night? You okay? My dad said you just dipped?" I left them unread for a while, then replied days later with something vague. "Yeah, just tired. Long week." It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the truth either. I avoided campus spots where I might run into him, turned my phone face down every time it buzzed. And yet, every quiet moment, every pause between lectures or in the shower or lying in bed, it all brought me back to that living room, to him, to what almost happened. I told myself I shouldn't feel this way, that it was wrong, that it crossed too many lines, friendship, age, trust. But shame wasn't the loudest emotion I felt. It was longing. I'd never felt seen like that before. Not in a surface way. Not in a compliment or a glance. But in that deep, soul-level way where someone looks at you and somehow understands you, the parts even you don't know how to name. By the third day, Cole cornered me after class. "You've been ghosting," he said, nudging my shoulder with mock offense. "What gives?" "Just busy," I said, forcing a smile. "Group projects killing me." Cole studied me. "You sure?" "Yeah." I lied again. He squinted. "My dad's been acting weird. Like, quieter than usual. Something happened." My pulse spiked. I kept my face still.
No.
We talked a bit. Just small talk." Cole shrugged. "Maybe he's just tired of being alone in that big house. He won't admit it, but I think he gets lonely." I didn't say anything, because part of me already knew that. had felt that, had become part of that loneliness, even if just for a moment. Anyway, Cole continued, slinging his bag over his shoulder. You should come by this weekend. He's grilling steaks. I nodded faintly. Yeah, maybe. But I knew I wouldn't. Not yet. That night I dreamt about him. We were in the kitchen again. Soft music playing, steam rising from a pot, the clink of wine glasses. But this time there was no tension, just warmth. His hand brushed mine and I didn't flinch. I leaned into him without fear, without thought. We moved like we belonged in that moment. When I woke up, the feeling lingered, a soft ache in my chest. I stared at the ceiling for a long time. Then I reached for my phone. I opened our old text thread. The last message from him was weeks ago, about a barbecue Cole was throwing. Before everything, my thumbs hovered. I started typing. Me. Can we talk? I stared at the words. Then I hit send. No punctuation. No overthinking. Just honesty, the kind he'd always offered me first. We met at a coffee shop on the edge of town. The kind with quiet music, chipped mugs, and mismatched chairs. Neutral ground. I got there first and chose a table near the back, away from the window. I didn't want to be seen. Not yet. When Mr. Grayson walked in, I stood instinctively, and then froze, unsure of what to do with my hands, my face, my heart. He smiled gently. No pressure, no judgment. Just calm. Hey, he said. Hey, I echoed. We sat across from each other, both of us holding coffee we didn't drink. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. The air between us held more than words could reach. I've been thinking, I started. His eyes met mine, steady, waiting. I think I've been questioning things for longer than I realized, I said. Not just about you, about me, who I am, what I want. He nodded once like that made perfect sense. You don't have to explain yourself to me. I want to, I said quietly, because I think part of me already knew something was different, even back in high school, but I didn't have words for it, and I didn't want to look at it too closely. He leaned back in his chair, hands folded around his coffee cup. I didn't plan it, he said. That night, you being there, me saying what I said. I just felt something real, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. I swallowed hard. It was real. We sat with that for a while. The clink of mugs, the low hum of conversation around us, the sound of the barista frothing milk. It all blurred into the background. I glanced at him. Does it scare you? What this could mean? He smiled, but it was a tired kind of smile. Terrifies me. But not because of you. Because I haven't let myself want anything real in a long time. And now, he looked at me, not answering right away. Now, I'm just trying not to ruin something that felt honest for once. I looked down at my hands, fingers curled tight around the ceramic cup. Then I said the thing I hadn't let myself say until now. When I was with you, it didn't feel like I was doing something wrong. It felt like I could finally breathe. He closed his eyes briefly, just a blink, but it felt like a quiet release of something he'd been holding too. We didn't rush the rest of the conversation. We walked afterward, through a park just behind the coffee shop, leaves crunching under our shoes, the wind picking up slightly. The sun was low, golden, soft around the edges. We didn't hold hands. We didn't need to. We just walked and talked about college, about loneliness, about the little things we missed by pretending to be fine all the time. I told him how exhausting it was to keep people at arm's length. He told me how easy it had become to hide behind being someone's father, someone's boss, someone safe. I forgot what it felt like to be wanted for who I am, he said. You are, I replied. And I don't think this is just attraction for me. I think it's more than that. He stopped walking, turned toward me. His eyes weren't intense or hungry. They were soft, curious, careful. I don't know where this leads, he said, and I won't pretend to have the answers. But if you ever want to come by, not as Cole's friend, not as someone figuring things out, but just as you're welcome. He reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a small folded note, and handed it to me. Not a text, not a digital invite. A handwritten note. Come by sometime when you're ready. That was it. I held the note in my hand long after we'd parted ways. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel scared. I felt seen. It was a Thursday when I texted him, "Tonight okay?" The reply came a few minutes later. "Mr. Grayson, doors open. Stove's warm. I'll be here."
No punctuación.
No pressure. Just an invitation. Cole had mentioned earlier in the week that he'd be out of town. A weekend trip with some teammates, last minute. I hadn't planned it this way, but when I heard he'd be gone, something in me had settled. I drove without music. I didn't need noise, I needed space. When I pulled into the driveway, everything looked exactly the same. The porch light was on. The hedges were still trimmed. The same faint golden glow filtered through the windows like it had that night weeks ago. But this time, I wasn't walking in as Cole's friend. I rang the doorbell anyway. Mr. Grayson opened it almost immediately. He looked relaxed, barefoot, sleeves rolled up, an apron tied around his waist with a light smear of flour on one side. There was something different about his smile too. It wasn't restrained. It was warm. "Hey," I said. "Hey." He stepped aside to let me in. The house smelled like garlic and rosemary again. A little déjà vu, a little magic. "You really did start cooking," I said, slipping off my jacket. "I told you," he said, grinning. "It's my only party trick." We moved into the kitchen naturally, as if no time had passed. He handed me a cutting board and a knife, motioning toward a bowl of cherry tomatoes. "Think you can handle these?" "I'll try not to embarrass myself." "You already have," he teased. We laughed and it felt real. No wait, no second guessing. Just two people in a kitchen, chopping vegetables and trading stories. He told me about a new project he was working on. Some consulting gig that let him work from home more. I told him about a professor who called my essay unexpectedly vulnerable, which we both agreed sounded like a backhanded compliment. We poured wine. We sampled the sauce. We bumped hips and pretended not to notice. There were no declarations, no awkward speeches. But the silence between us, when it came, was comfortable now. Not full of tension, but ease. After dinner, we stayed at the table, sipping wine slowly, not ready to leave the space we'd made for ourselves. He looked at me over his glass. "You feel different tonight," he said. "I think I am," I replied. He didn't ask what that meant. He didn't have to. Later, when we moved to the living room, the space between us closed without discussion. I sat next to him on the couch, close then closer, until our shoulders touched, and his hand brushed against mine. I turned to him. "I'm ready," I said. For what, I wasn't sure. But it was true. He leaned in, kissed me again, this time slower, fuller. There was no rush, no heat just for the sake of heat. This wasn't about lust. This was about finally letting someone see you, and choosing to see them back. We didn't sleep right away. We talked, shared stories, laid tangled on the couch under a throw blanket like teenagers sneaking into a new kind of truth. At some point, I fell asleep. The morning was soft. I blinked into the sunlight as it filtered through the curtains, casting slow-moving shadows across the hardwood floor. I was lying against his chest, his arm around me, steady and warm. Our hands, his bigger, mine curled into his, lay in the patch of sunlight spilling onto the couch cushion. I didn't move. I didn't want to. I didn't feel fear, or guilt, or confusion, just stillness, and something that might have been peace. I stared at our hands for a long time, and thought, it started as dinner. But what I found was someone who saw me when I wasn't even looking. What did you think about their connection? Would you have gone back that night? If this story moved you, give it a like and subscribe for more heartfelt true gay love stories. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss a new upload.
Comment Bilo?
Have you ever fallen for someone you weren't supposed to? Share this story with a friend who needs a reminder. Sometimes love finds us when we're not even looking.